There's this, what I call the hyper-focused courtship, which is a human thing, which is when people meet people and become infatuated with each other, the brain releases a lot more dopamine. And this lasts for 20 to 24 months about. What happens is actually the ADHD partner, the ADHD is kind of quite covered up lots of times. They become very attentive for them, very excited, very engaged because they have all this extra dopamine. To the non-ADHD partner, what they're seeing is somebody who's exciting, interesting, different, thinks differently, does fun stuff on the spur of the moment. But there aren't any of the danger signs of, oh, and by the way, doesn't ever follow through or whatever, because they have all this extra dopamine.
Have you ever found you and your partner having the same fight for the 100th time? You know the one. Where they're like, if you don't remember to do the thing, and you're like, if you just stop nagging me about the thing, and suddenly you're both wondering how you got here again? Today, we are sitting down with Melissa Orlov, literally the expert on ADHD and relationships. Like, if you Googled, quote, ADHD marriage even once, you've seen her name. She's breaking down the parent-child dynamic, the trust erosion thing, why saying just be nicer to me doesn't actually fix anything, and how couples can stop the cycle before someone ends up sleeping on the couch. This one's gonna hit close to home, but in the best way. So take a breath. You got this. Melissa Orlov is the founder of ADHDmarriage.com and ADHD and Marriage Consulting, and is a top expert in the field. Simply put, Melissa helps couples impacted by ADHD learn to thrive within their relationships. Melissa is also a very near and dear friend of Erin's and mine. We are so profoundly struck by her ongoing work in this space and with ADHD in general. We're just blessed and honored for you to be here. Thank you, Melissa, for joining us today on Attention Different.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I am.
Good. I'm glad. Erin and I do prep for all of our special guests. We prep work. But with you, I picked up on that extra bit of intention. Like Erin and I were like, no, we got to get this right. We got to have a meeting before we send slide decks and read up on her stuff because of how profoundly we've been struck by some of your lectures and some of your works.
Thank you. I mean, I really, really appreciate that. I mean, it's really been a passion for me, and I've been doing it for a long time now. So it feels really good to be able to give people information that can help them.
Yeah. So crucial. And yeah, as I was just saying, I recommend your books and your courses to a lot of my clients, my couples who are struggling, both who have, in ADHD partnerships, two ADHD adults, or, the ADHD and non-ADHD partnership coupling, which is a lot of times the one that has some of the most difficulties understanding each other. And I was just saying that I have a client this week who, he's had a very long-standing marriage, but they still have these dynamics that are part of their I think, understanding and misunderstanding dynamics, parentification of one person in the relationship, thinking they take on too much responsibility. And I think there's a lot of folks out there who are going to benefit today with all of the information, wealth of knowledge that you have. And I was saying, I recommend your books and your resources and your courses to almost all of my clients who come in the door with those issues, because you are one of the preeminent and best resources that I know on this topic.
Thank you. I mean, it's not often, Melissa, that when I say to my close kin whom Erin and I are interviewing, I'll usually have to explain a little bit because their specialty or their expertise is in ADHD. But this time when I say Melissa Orlov, everyone goes, "Oh, right, Gottman circles." And I'm not responsible for the choices or opinions of others. I've mentioned you so many times in casual passing conversation with friends that there are people in New Orleans who know about you and have never been to a lecture.
It is interesting. I mean, this is the benefit of being reviewed in the New York Times, right? A lot of people hear about you that way. So I've been very lucky, and I was an early person into this work, and I think that also made a difference in terms of people paying attention. And I take it really seriously. I mean, I try really hard to get balanced information out, particularly because there are so many what I call mixed couples, ADHD, non-ADHD couples, who really do struggle to understand each other because they're so neurologically different and their experiences are different. And we go, as humans, we go towards something going, well, that's how I see it. It must be how everybody else sees it too. And it takes a while to realize that actually, people's brains work very differently. And so I work really hard to try to represent both sides as best I can. I don't have ADHD, so I don't pretend to know exactly what that feels like, but I have also certainly talked with an awful lot of people who do talk to me about their experiences. So
yeah, and the other side of it too, right? You were married to an ADHD partner, right?
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So you have the non-ADHD perspective, which I think is really important because there's probably a lot of listeners out there who are listening either for their spouse or, sending them resources like, hey, check this out, do this. It just, as it happens quite a bit that the ADHDer might be in a little bit of denial or their partner's like, hey, you really need to read this book or do this thing or take this course. And that person might be a little resistant. They might feel put on the spot or defensive about having to do that work.
I do a thing where people can sign up for my seminar, which isn't very expensive anyway for what you get, but they can get 100% refund before the third session. So it's a free trial, essentially. Almost nobody takes advantage of that because, part of the fear that people have actually is that I'm somehow going to pick on the people with ADHD, right?
Yeah.
And so it's often the case where, sometimes ADHD partners say, hey, we have to go do this. And it's the non-ADHD partner who's resistant, but more often it's the other way because they don't want to be picked on. And then after they hear me talk, they're like, oh, she's not going to pick on me. Okay. So,
yeah. And that makes total sense because, there was that study out that ADHDers get something like 20,000 negative messages by, what was it, the age of like 12 or something? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you just think of that, you compound that over the years and you think a full grown adult, how many times have they been told that? Not only by parents, teachers, coaches, other partners.
Everyone.
Everyone in their life.
I made that distinction. It's everyone. Aaron, I'm glad that stat was important to me too, because I forgot to make the nuanced distinction of sometimes you receive hyper intense criticism from like people of authority. It's strange to have lived in existence where virtually everyone has a lot of the same negative thing to say to me. Like it creates this virtual reality around you where how could you know anything else other than I tend to do this thing all the time that pisses everyone off. I tend to do this thing all the time that pisses everyone off. I tend to do this thing all the time that pisses everyone off. Like that is the view of self at a certain point in your 30s.
Yeah.
After 34
and not
years
only that, but the other side of it is that you observe other people who don't have those same struggles. And so there's a lot of self-flagellation that goes on as well. You get some really significant inner critic stuff going on where you're just saying, well, why can't I do that stuff? And particularly if you don't, it's better now. People who've grown up knowing that they had ADHD have a huge advantage over people who did not and had no explanation for it other than the sort of moral diagnosis of, I must be stupid, I must be lazy, whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. So, and it's also scary. You think about all that critique coming from the people that 12-year-olds and younger interact with, which is parents, friends, coaches, teachers, people that they should be getting love and, big dreams, go follow them kind of stuff.
So,
do you think that that's one of the key things, this parent-child dynamic, that can kind of manifest because of some of that stuff, because of the negative messages, the defensiveness, the triggering? Where do you think that comes from?
Well, I think the triggering and the defensive stuff is increased by, growing up with a sense of, I often do things wrong. That defensiveness is rooted often in shame, right?
Yes,
and the shame is developed over that childhood. And shame is like this master emotion. Listen to Freud. Freud says, it's that master emotion. It controls everything. You'll do almost anything to avoid feeling shame. So defensiveness is a response to that. But I also think that people with ADHD have a pretty legitimate complaint, which is that people are often trying to change how they do things because they don't understand it. I have another program, which isn't a seminar. It's like an ongoing membership program that couples can join to sort of do ongoing work with experts at a lower monthly fee.
We're going to get that pluggable official later. That's great.
I did a workshop on resentment, and I separated out people who were in the partnerships who didn't have ADHD and then people who did have ADHD. And I was really interested to see that there was a big consensus amongst the ADHD partners saying, look, one of the things I resent the most is feeling like I'm the family project. Everybody's trying to fix me or make me do something a certain way or be different or whatever. And I really feel a lot of resentment about that, and that's an enormous issue because this is in fact the case. A lot of times the more organized partner is trying to get the ADHD partner to do things differently or to be a different person or, to be this sort of magical fantasy person that they're imagining their partner's going to be. So it's a legitimate concern, but the defensiveness is the wrong response to get it fixed because the defensiveness just aggravates things.
Yeah, causes more conflict.
Yes, exactly. It just escalates things. And then the other person gets more frustrated and pursues more because they're more frustrated, right? It makes the cycle worse.
And the ADHD shuts down or dysregulates emotionally. Yeah.
Yeah, because it feels overwhelming and it feels like, well, I'm never going to be able to actually hold my own here. But I just thought that was an incredibly insightful thing that they were saying because I just, I have such compassion for someone who's in that situation.
Oh, I was texting Aaron and we know people by name who had exactly that experience. The way you quoted it became the family project.
Yeah.
Like that describes adults that I know now in their mid to late 30s who are thank whichever therapist they pray to, right, has helped them come out of those internal negative core beliefs. As Aaron has taught me before.
Yeah. Well, and also learn how to set up appropriate and constructive boundaries, which is something I talk to people a whole lot about right now.
Hey, Stephen here. Sorry to interrupt. We just wanted to take a brief moment to tell you about this week's sponsor. At Attention Different, our mission is simple. Offer ADHD adults proven practical strategies for living a more balanced, fulfilled ADHD life. And that is why we are thrilled to offer our latest course, Thriving with Adult ADHD. While other courses might focus on the pain and struggle of being an adult with ADHD, and we do not want to minimize that, this course is designed around accessible, relevant, and applicable techniques that address the most common challenges facing ADHD adults. Inside Thriving with Adult ADHD, you will learn how to better understand your adult ADHD and gain clarity about how your brain works. Improve focus by using tools to cut through distractions and get things done. Create time management systems that are realistic and effective. Get organized by building routines and habits to bring structure to your days. Learn to manage your energy for productivity without burnout. Regulate your emotions by developing strategies to manage your emotional ups and downs. You'll learn to find balance by optimizing medication, self-care, and professional support. Thriving with Adult ADHD features 2 hours of on-demand video, 10 downloadable resources, lifetime access to the material, and a satisfaction guarantee. Go to attentiondifferent.com/thriving to sign up now. That's attentiondifferent.com/thriving to sign up now. Hey, thanks for the quick break. Now back to the interview.
This is really key. This is something that comes up so much. There's the resentment, and then what that breeds is contempt in the relationship.
Yeah.
And I think it's rooted a lot of times in, like what you said, expectations or misaligned expectations. You're assuming that you're expecting your partner to be this dream version of themselves that you're imagining in your head, but that is a fantasy. And the person has very real neurological brain wiring differences.
Well, by the way, it goes both ways, right? So you're talking about the ADHD partner not being the dream partner. But for the ADHD partner, a really common feeling is, if my partner would just be nicer to me, we'd be fine.
Literally,
that's not realistic, right?
Yeah.
Say it again.
Yes. No, just literally that sentence. I've said that sentence. I have said that sentence to a therapist where I was like, if my partner was just nicer, then this would all work out.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you, because we're in a podcast and I can do this, you're right and you're wrong, okay? Just saying.
That was the feeling at the time, too, to be clear. The confusing feeling is, I know that I'm right about the meanness, but I know that I'm also missing something.
There you go.
So in what way is he wrong, or like what way does that not work? Yeah.
So the way that doesn't work is that it's a sort of a mutual denial pattern, and it's really, really common for couples impacted by ADHD. ADHD. You have the ADHD partner who says, look, if you just be nicer to me, everything would be fine. And that misses the point, which is that there are ADHD symptoms that are getting in the way, like being really distractible and your partner not feeling loved, or having trouble following through on things and therefore not stepping up in a equal partnership, those kinds of things. So they're there. And to just say, hey, you just need to be nicer and it'll all be fine, denies the other partner's experience. At the same time, the other side of that is that the non-ADHD partners tend to say, well, if you just fix the ADHD, everything would be fine. And that has exactly this a parallel problem with it, which is that they're not acknowledging that they're probably stepping over the boundaries and codependent. They're probably parenting or managing their partner. So they are also contributing. And so just to deny their role is just as damaging as for the ADHD partner to not step up and acknowledge the ADHD issues.
So both people are kind of locked into, I'm changing you. You're trying to change me. Stop trying to change me. And like both of them are trying to do the same thing, which at the end of the day, it doesn't work. Trying to change someone else.
Yeah. And I would say I see more aggressive efforts to change, typically on the non-ADHD partner side, to try to change the ADHD partner. They have, there's this diagnosis with a name. There are sort of societal norms that say, hey, if you say you're going to be somewhere at a certain time, you actually ought to be able to show up at that time. Or if you promise you're going to do something, you ought to actually do it. So there tends to be more going in that direction.
Yeah. They feel more justified.
Yeah.
Because that's the world, but that's the society we all operate in. I understand where the pressure is coming from that part. Yeah. Whether it's good or not. Yeah.
They sort of take the coattails of that, and that means they're quote unquote right. But the other partner also has pushback. It tends to be resistance, defensiveness and resistance, rather than an aggressive attempt to change the other partner. It's more of a complaint. If you would just be nice to me, versus, hey, I'm on a project to get you to change. Right.
And like maybe they feel like they're getting undermined in some ways, right? Because I think ADHDers respond to praise a lot better than blame and criticism. And so if their non-ADHD partner in this example is nitpicking on them or constantly judging them or saying things in a harsh tone, that person probably gets to feel like, I can't do anything right. There's nothing that I do that's right. And if they would just recognize my effort here a little bit, it encourage me to do more. But when they nitpick, you did the dishes, but you did leave out still the cup. There's one cup on the counter.
The dishwasher wars. By the way, the dish wars are real. It's a really it's a hot spot. It's crazy, but
dish and laundry. We were talking about this last night. Dishes and laundry. Yeah. And floors and clean floors. What? I have found that it's a non-gendered battle. This is a culture of what family were you raised in and who.
Yeah. What's the standard of clean?
Yes, it's what's the standard of clean as per the culture you came from, and then the nuance in it, the nuance within is so charming, right? Yeah, or the household that you came from. Right?
Well, and ADHD is hereditary, so you came most likely from an ADHD household.
It's a big culture.
Yeah. One of your parents had probably a 50% chance of having the ADHD themselves, right?
So getting even more complicated by whatever you witnessed and absorbed when your parents fought over the laundry and the dishwasher and the floors, because they had inevitably did, right?
Yeah, they probably did. I mean, so you ask an interesting question, though, which you circling back to the praise reward side of things versus the picking on people, which is how it feels. It's actually, I say this is one reason why getting people educated with the same information, like with a seminar or something, is really helpful, because I can say on both sides, okay, here's what's going on in your partner's brain. Here's what probably is going on in your brain. And these things are patterns, and actually often it reflects what people are thinking, like what you guys are saying, like, yes, I've heard those words, I will say to a non-ADHD partner, say thank you to acknowledge the effort that the ADHD partner has put in to do something like, do the dishes or get a project done on time, do all of the scheduling or the alarms or whatever they're doing to keep themselves focused and doing a task. And almost inevitably, the first response that I get back from the non-ADHD partners, why should I have to say thank you for stuff that adults should be able to do without thinking about it and that I do all the time? Which misses the point of the neurodiversity, misses the issues around the fact that there are symptoms and the two of them are not the same. And it's not a level playing field, in fact, which isn't to say that somehow the non-ADHD partner is doing stuff really well and the ADHD partner never does stuff well. It's that they're uneven. It's like some people have incredible strengths, ADHD or not, in one area and not so much in others. And so part of the trick is figuring out what are your strengths, what are your partner's strengths, and how do you bridge the gaps that are left between them. But usually what I'll say to a non-ADHD partner is, yes, I recognize that there's some resentment inside you that you're holding because you feel as if you've had to do a lot of things and compensate for the symptoms and stuff. Now you guys are learning better. And it's always good to acknowledge the effort of your partner, whether they have ADHD or not. If somebody puts in an effort to do something, it's great to acknowledge it and to say thank you, period. Who do you want to be in the world? Right. And then they start to soften up typically. So,
yeah. Right. Yeah. And I think that there's a certain type of attraction or pull, I guess, like this magnetism almost of the opposites attract phenomenon, right? That happens where you have, I think, initially sometimes ADHD person draws in a partner who has some of those opposite qualities. They may seem really on top of things. They might be kind of type A. They might have a personality where they are very impressive because they do a lot of stuff. And then the ADHD partner, on the other hand, I think they attract a lot of times someone who's like, wow, I have anxiety and I can't relax. And this person, it just seems to be very easygoing and exciting and spontaneous. And I love that, right? And that's I think that initial attraction sometimes comes into play. But then as the relationship progresses, and now they have kids, now they've been together, now they live together, that initial stuff starts to not be as fun anymore, right?
Yeah.
It's like the spontaneity and all that, it just is wears off.
So there's actually something else going on, which I'll get to in a second. But you mentioned anxiety, and I actually have this conversation. I don't know if you know who Wes Crenshaw is, but he is a guy in Kansas City. He's awesome, and he knows ADHD. He and I have this ongoing conversation about, do non-ADHD partners start out with anxiety, or do they develop anxiety when they start to live in this chaotic life that they didn't have before? And he holds the former and I hold some of the latter, which is, I don't think I was I certainly could anticipate things, but I don't think I was a highly anxious person, but I became quite anxious faced with repetitive, not knowing whether my partner would follow through or not follow through, and whether or not I was going to be left suddenly in an emergency standing, trying to clean up something. And I think that's pretty common. You're talking about courtship.
Yeah.
There's actually something else that's going on. So there's this, what I call the hyper-focused courtship phase, which is actually a thing, which is a human thing, which is when people meet people and become infatuated with each other, the brain releases a lot more dopamine. So this is written by Helen, I think it is, who wrote Why We Love. There's the chemistry of love. And this lasts for 20 to 24 months about. And so what happens is actually the ADHD partner, the ADHD is kind of quite covered up lots of times. They become very attentive for them, very excited, very engaged because they have all this extra dopamine.
Hell yeah.
And so to the non-ADHD partner, what they're seeing is somebody who's exciting, interesting, different, thinks differently, is, does fun stuff on the spur of the moment. But there aren't any of the danger signs of, and by the way, it doesn't ever follow through or whatever, because they have all this extra dopamine. Yeah. And the ADHD partner sees the non-ADHD partner who's like, wow, this is great, and off they go. I mean, in my courtship phase with my ex, we had so much fun. It was awesome. And a lot of it had to do with his spontaneity. And I mean, he was on all the time. But then the dopamine falls off in 97% of the population. I mean, this is
the
not
novelty
an ADHD
wears away.
thing.
Yeah, that's the novelty. Yeah, that's exactly.
But it's not just novelty. It's actually chemistry.
Oh, sure.
The dopamine goes away, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And so then the ADHD partner shows up for the first time with ADHD symptoms being more obvious because they go back to their normal, both partners go back to their normal dopamine state, which for the ADHD partner is lower.
Yeah.
And so
this happens in other domains. Like I see this happen with students who enter college and they start out strong in the semester and then by midterm time, right, they've fallen off. And they, they might be like, oh, I'm using my calendar. I'm doing this stuff. I'm going to the gym. I'm having all these things. And then by midterms, it's like, no, I have missed my 8 a.m. class 5 times and I'm, not following through with this, and this. And then you see this in jobs too. You see this where it's like, you start out with a new job. It's really exciting. First 6 months of the job, they're locked in. They're like, okay, learning this stuff. It's new. It's great. I got these. I'm really interested in this project. I'm learning my role. And then all of a sudden, now when it comes time to, well, you got to do your expense report every week. You got to come into the stand-up meeting.
And that's sustaining stuff, right? There's a sustaining thing that's hard to do. And with the relationship stuff, you keep getting all this dopamine for quite a while. I mean, just a couple years usually. And then this new person shows up and I remember actually when it happened to us, I was just so surprised. And my first response was like, did I do something wrong? Like suddenly my partner's not paying any attention to me. Maybe, and it was right after we'd gotten married. So I thought, well, maybe he's no longer interested in me because, and it took us a while to recalibrate. And move through things. And it was a struggle because at that point we didn't know about ADHD. I hadn't done any of this research. I didn't know anything. So
and your partner wasn't
really
diagnosed at that point?
No, he wasn't diagnosed for, the first 10 years of our marriage or something like that.
I can't in these moments decide which to latch on to. The sort of like 30,000 feet above broad strokes, like this is the complication of love. Mm-hmm. Of two brains having to meet and figure shit out. Like that's like part of this is like, everyone. And then there's another part that feels so granular and so specific and an allegory that I've heard now many, many times, like from our people, right? The glossy rose tinted lenses going away and the real work of running a home together, of keeping a schedule together, of admin. The admin that romantic inclined couples don't like to admit is there. It's hard. It's hard for me to latch on to either one because like it's a universal experience that we all have. But I also really it sings to me the tragedy of the commons might also have some specificity and nuance to it for us.
And I think the consistency is key, right? I think even though that's not part of the disorder, it's like ADHD is a consistency disorder,
right?
Because of the executive functioning impairments and that comes into play, especially in relationships. How much do you show up and do the things you said you're going to do? Remember the stuff that you guys talked about. Oh, you're going to pick up this thing from the store. You're going to go take the girls to their soccer practice or whatever it is. Like those things are the things that like start to wear on people. Is like, well, now I can't trust or count on you to do this. So I have to constantly be worrying or thinking about it or checking in. And I hear from the non-ADHD partners a lot of times, I feel like I have 2 kids or multiple kids, right? The adult partner becomes the kid because I now have to keep track of their schedule. I have to remind them. I have to I can't just tell them, hey, let's divide and conquer. Let's split up the roles. And I know you're going to show up because maybe it's 50 or 60% of the time. You might not.
Yes. And I used to have a joke that my partner was consistently inconsistent. So we've just touched on like 3 different things here. Going in reverse as best I can remember at this gray hair. This erosion of trust is very serious because when you talked much earlier about learning to sort of not respect your partner or whatever, and maybe disdain the partner,
contempt, is what
or feel contempt,
resentment,
and a lot of that has to do with the inconsistency, and then then there's the shame, right? So if you start saying, "Oh, how inconsistent you are," then the shame shows up because this has been a comment that's been going on for many, many years for people, and then the shame makes the person with the ADHD want to escape, typically, rather than engage. So it's a really complicated thing. And the trust, if you talk about like if you look at John Gottman's work, he did an 800-page book on trust, right? I mean, it's enormous, and did a whole bunch of deep statistical analysis about what are the components of trust. And what he came away with was actually a two-part equation. One is called transparency, which is you will essentially follow through on the things that you said you were going to do. And the other is about ethical and moral standing, that you are going to be honest and that you can be relied upon to have a strong value system or whatever. And with ADHD, that is inadequate, because the first one, the transparency, you're going to follow through on stuff,
it's hilarious.
You've got ADHD symptoms. I'm sorry.
That's not going to happen all the time, period.
Right? But the other side of it is, I don't in any way, shape, or form believe that people who have ADHD are not trustworthy. They are able to earn people's trust. And the question is, how do you do that? How do you keep somebody's trust or earn it? And one of the ways is with actual transparency and ownership. So at the point at which somebody is saying, if you'd just be nice to me, that's not owning your ADHD, right? If you own your ADHD, you say something along the lines of, I can see why that thing that I just didn't do is a problem. And either I've tried 85 ways to do it and I can't do that, and we're going to have to figure out what the workaround is, or I'm actually going to put a system in place, or try to put a system in place so I can do better and I can contribute more. I mean, there are lots of ways to contribute as a partner. It doesn't have to be on one specific item, right? So owning it and then doing the best you can to be a transparent, honest, engaged partner, including the ADHD. That's how you earn trust. Non-ADHD partners say to me all the time, look, I don't care if my partner is successful at everything. What I care about is that they, A, stay engaged with me, and B, that they're honest with me. Covering up because you're ashamed, or because you don't want to get in trouble, or you don't want to disappoint me or whatever. That's the biggest disappointment of all, is the fact that you're covering up, right?
It's also the most dangerous. It's also the most dangerous and risky.
Yeah. And on the other side of that, I think what I hear from the ADHD partners themselves is they say things like, well, I don't feel safe, really. I mean, in different words, but they say, I don't feel safe to share those things because I just get attacked or blamed, and it turns into a big fight. So sometimes they're covering up to avoid what they think is kind of an imminent critical attack, conflict type of thing.
But think about that interaction, right? So you cover up, and then the partner's disappointed, and so they become more attentive and critical. So you cover up more. And I mean, it's a downward reinforcing spiral, right? Yeah. And so you don't want that. You have to, this is why the transparency part, where you have to own it, sort of say, okay, gulp. I fear that your response to this is not going to be positive. Could you please open up and let me tell you what happened and what I'm doing about it, right? If you just say, I'm going to tell you over and over again what happened, it becomes across after the 55th time as an excuse.
Totally.
Right? Yeah. So to be able to at least acknowledge, I understand this is doing, I'm trying really hard. Here's what I'm doing. There's an action step to it. That's a lot more palatable. And sometimes, you might not be able to ever accomplish a specific thing. That's okay. But the fact that you tried to address it, that you recognized that it was an issue for your partner, and that you gave them the credit of being heard, right? Yeah. That's where you rebuild the trust. It isn't in getting everything perfect. That's not the goal. That's never going to be the goal for either partner. Mm-hmm. But being able to have a space where you can talk about something. I talk about a concept called conflict intimacy. This is not my concept. It's from the Relationship Institute, but it's a way of being able to listen non-defensively and speak non-aggressively. And it is the foundation, the building block of getting out of what Stephen was talking about, which is this, I don't feel safe. I don't want to speak up thing. If you're willing to, if your number one job is just respectful listening and respectful speaking, you'll be doing a lot better.
Yeah. I like what you're saying about communication as the core thing here, that they need to pay attention to. And it takes both partners, right? Regardless of whose stuff is coming up to the forefront the most. It's like, I think, let's say the non-ADHD partner in this case, if they think to themselves, okay, what's effective, right? If I want change, I can't change the partner, but what I can do is I can change myself and how I'm communicating to get my needs met. Can I be more assertive? Can I state those needs?
Wait a minute. You might be able to communicate well. That doesn't mean you're going to get your needs met.
Exactly.
No, but you're more likely, right? You're more likely.
Maybe. I mean, I think you have a responsibility to communicate clearly and to make choices, right? It doesn't make sense to critique every little thing. So align what you're going to talk about with the things that you most cherish and let go of the things that you don't cherish particularly. I mean, so that so you can let go of a lot of stuff. Both partners can.
Yeah. Like pick your battles.
Yeah, what you were saying last night. Well, because I hear both. I'm very delighted when Aaron and I have a whole epiphany, and then a specialist comes in and goes, "Well, not exactly," and then we go, "A learning moment." But Aaron shared an anecdote from something that he tried for a month with his partner, and I think this is perfectly framing it. So, do you mind sharing that, Aaron? And
sure.
I'd love to hear how Melissa responds to that.
Yeah. So my wife has ADHD, and we kind of present in slightly different ways. Like I have combined type; she has more of the inattentive type ADHD. So my wife Alexis, she kind of has some historical trauma from her childhood surrounding keeping her room clean, being a messy person, feeling like that she was constantly being harped on, by her parents about that stuff, right? And so, I'm a little bit more of a clean person in general. I keep things more picked up. It's kind of my own coping mechanism to how, I keep myself, keep my brain feeling as good as I can, just taking care of some of the environment around me. So we still have some conflicts around that, right? Around that space. But what I noticed is I grew up with like a critical mother who would come in and kind of nitpick about stuff. And I think also my father was very picky about things sometimes, almost didn't have OCD. He treated a lot of people with OCD. He's a psychologist, but he took on some of those OCD tendencies sometimes and like needed things a certain way. So I think I kind of absorbed some of that stuff, both the criticalness and then the like need to have things a certain way. And what I would communicate sometimes, which wouldn't go over that well, would after a long day, I might be stressed. My natural instincts to be gentle or nice or whatever, those might melt away, and I might inadvertently say something that sounded critical, right? And it may not have even been critical, right? Like a casual observer might hear it and feel something very differently, right? Like, oh, were you planning to wash this, or this thing is out on the counter.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be as the unspoken rest of that. Are you putting this away? Why haven't you put it away yet? As the unspoken half of the sentence. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But then it's that implied criticism that's there. And so what I did is I did this experiment, and I did this for like a month straight, where I said to myself, you know what? I don't want to be this person. I don't want to be the kind of person that is constantly making my partner feel like they're being criticized, because I was trying that and it wasn't working. It was just, she was like feeling like, no, nothing I do is good enough. I just won't do it, and avoiding those things. So what I tried is I was like, you know what? I'm going to take care of my own emotions. I'm going to take responsibility for my feelings this moment. And every time I had that impulse, that like thing that came up inside of me, the thought of like, notice the thing and it's out of place, or it's not the way I'd like it to be, and I could say something about this, I turned that. I flipped it to recognizing some effort or something that I appreciate about my partner. And I would say that to her. I'd say, thank you for, let's say we were talking about the laundry, right? Steve and I had this example at the laundry. I fold my clothes a certain way. Alexis folds them a different way.
As do I, as does my partner. So it is
pretty much everybody, right?
Every
Why are the socks that way? Anyway,
so when she folds the laundry, right, I have an opportunity there, right? This is a good example. Do I comment on the fact that, hey, I don't fold it this way. Why did you fold it this way? That kind of thing. Like, reminding her of that or something, right? So instead of doing that, what I did is I just turned it into thank you for doing the laundry. I really appreciate it. And what I would do is I would deal with that frustration. I would kind of take that frustration and allow that to be something that passes over me, right? Because I'd own that. It's my frustration. She's not intentionally causing that frustration. And then I asked myself a question about it. Say, how important is this, right? Is this a crucial thing? And how do I want my relationship to be?
Yeah.
And do I want this relationship to feel tense? Do I want a partner to experience this thing in a loving way? Or do I want to come across as nitpicking and critical? I didn't want that. So I tried it. I tested this out for a whole month.
And what was your feeling after a month?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you what was interesting first.
Okay.
What I noticed is that because I praised her and I recognized her efforts and I had always put it into gratitude, she actually started to do more. Mm-hmm. She started to be like, I'm doing more of the dishes. I'm taking care of more of the things. I'm folding more laundry. I'm cleaning up. I'm picking things up off the floor. She did, I would say, 80% more in that month than she had.
Significant increase.
Significant.
Yeah.
And it was without me even saying it, right? It's all it was is just recognizing the effort around stuff. And it just shocked me. So, and then your question is like, how did I feel? Right. So what I would say is I actually felt a lot better about myself.
Good.
Because what I recognize is, sure, I'd have to deal with that temporary discomfort. But if I did that, if I let that pass over me, I was doing it in service of the partnership, of the overall, of the connection.
So what you got, I talked a little bit earlier about aligning things with what's really important to you, right? And what you came to the conclusion after you watched it was, or after you thought about it, was how the socks are done or how the clothes are folded actually isn't important. That's not in my value structure.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And what is in your value structure is to be a respectful partner, to be a loving partner towards your partner. That's a very big thing. And the socks or what the shirts are a very little thing. And so you were able to differentiate. You also got the experience of when you are with someone who has ADHD and you say positive things, they are much more likely to wish to engage with you.
Yeah.
And to engage with the things that they need to engage. Otherwise, it's like, why should I bother trying to do this? He's still going to tell me that I did it wrong. So forget it. Right. And so you lived that.
Is it wrong for me to feel like the way you're capturing it here, Melissa, it's not a shoo-in. It's not for sure, but ADHDers tend to have this inverse response to affirmation and criticism in a maximal way. If we get criticized too much, we will maximally shut off. We will go, it's a 1 or a 0.
It's a trigger.
Then weirdly, if you were affirmative, I used to call us Brittany Spaniels. If we're a breed of dog, we're Brittany Spaniels. You train them with affirmation. You can't critique them. If you critique them, they won't learn. And they're some of the smartest dogs in any breed, but you have to be nice to them. And it makes all these Southern hunting dads affect femininity in a really fun way on YouTube if you want a really cool hole to go down. So it's also 1 and 0 in the positive is what I'm hearing. That there is an opportunity that when Aaron started paying positives, paying gratitude into that kitty rather than criticism, hatred, etc. It's a bank. It fills up, and then they start making investments in other areas. And ADHDers tend to want the empathy train to keep going. We want the reward train to keep moving. Yeah. And if we're already stimulated with rewards, we will employ positive pro-social behavior to seek more rewards. Is kind of what I'm getting at.
And that is what happened in this case. And I think it's a common thing. There is another possible outcome. I did a similar experiment when I was much younger. And again, before we really knew what was going on. But my partner was saying to me, if you would just be nicer to me, everything would be fine. And so I did I said, okay, for a month, I'm just going to be really nice to this guy and I'm not going to request anything or bug him or whatever. And I did. And he blithely went on his way and completely ignored me. But he was a lot happier. But by the end of the month, I was about to spit something out. I was so angry. So, you had a very positive.
Third rail.
Yeah, exactly. So you had a very positive experience, which I think is common. And and this is why when non-ADHD partners say, why should I thank somebody for, doing the dishes or whatever? I say, because that is what people need. And people with ADHD really do respond well, generally. I mean, my partner responded well. He was in a better mood, but he didn't respond better towards me specifically. He just was feeling better about life.
And maybe I don't want to diminish, Aaron, what either of y'all have done, but I mean the big elephant in the room is both Aaron and Alexis are keenly aware of their condition in a way that neither you or your partner were. You're operating on you're operating on a bedrock of understanding, as to quote another friend of mine, you're having arguments and conversations with the same universe of fact. Right. So it's an easier starting place. Yeah.
And I think also there's another difference. I was doing it at the time to run an experiment. I wasn't doing it necessarily to align my behaviors with a set of values.
Yeah.
Which you were, Aaron.
Yeah.
And I think that is important because I came out of it a different way because the experiment didn't, it was almost like trying to manipulate my partner. In retrospect, to behave differently.
It was a test.
Right? It was a test. Yeah. Exactly.
Let's see if you can really. This is what you say you want. Well, let's see. Let's see if you can actually do this.
So these are the kinds of mistakes. People make these mistakes, and I'm human. I made it as well, and realized that it's not. So you had made the comment about you need to communicate better, and I was going like, well. It's not just communication. You had something better there, which was you were really thinking about your value set and about aligning your behavior that way. And it wasn't just nice words that somebody taught you to say. This is actually some of the beef that I have when people say, well, if I just say it in this way, they get taught by a therapist someplace that they say, when you do X, I feel Y and blah, 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 blah. And to me, that doesn't have what you had, Aaron, when you were doing it, which is a really thoughtful approach to who do I want to be. So when I talk with couples at each partner, I talk about really trying to get to that place where you are reflective, your actions are reflective of your values. Don't set up boundaries which are rules for your partner. You're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. Align the rules with yourself. How am I going to behave? Who do I want to be? I want to be a certain kind of partner, like Aaron was doing this. And so I'm going to align my own behaviors that way and see what happens. It's not to manipulate the other person. And it's a really important distinction.
Yeah. And it's I think for the longer term too, because when you do it in service of your values, the values are something that it changes you fundamentally. Whereas if it's just something you're trying on, it's almost like, trying on a new outfit for a day or a week or a month and be like, I could fit this style, or being like, no, this is really who I am now. Like this is me. I feel comfortable in these clothes and wear them.
So when, I struggle a little bit because I talk about this as boundaries, but, and people think of boundaries like, the hand goes out, you can't do this. They think of it as rules for other people. So you really have to circle people around to a different way of thinking about it. But all of this stuff that we're talking about really is about boundaries. And couples impacted by ADHD really need to understand what's theirs and what's not theirs to get out of that parent-child dynamic. Right? To get out of the, I'm going to manage you, or you're going to be the family project or whatever. And also to get out of the, you're not the boss of me, all this stuff.
The parole officer world stuff. Yeah. The word choice. It's a loop of the same. Aaron taught me sandbagging. And my God, do I found just like throwing past mistakes and behaviors at each other. Like it was on one of your slide decks for your lecture, Melissa. I got to that sort of like the past is we have to respect as a time where we were like you kind of functionally different people without tools. Yeah. And the present is we now have tools to use, remember, and that I find myself having a feedback loop of that conversation with big R relationships that I have, blood relatives, romantic partners, business partners, right? That combination of sandbagging from using past examples of poor behavior or missing the mark to speak to the present, and then also the lobbing at each other stuff that has nothing to do with the other person. It comes from the father wound, the mother wound, etc. It overcomplicates these relationships in profound and beautiful ways.
All relationships are complicated, but yes, I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's if you hang on to, as human beings, we want to understand. We want to create stories.
Yes.
You probably know all about that, right? So,
yes. I have been saying this forever, Melissa. Storytelling is a science. It is actually a science. Humans have been developing this tool our entire existence.
Because otherwise it's just like chaos and you don't have any idea why something happens or why it's happening to you or any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, so we try to create stories, and sometimes we create stories that we get stuck in. So the past, when you didn't know about ADHD, was not nuanced and not well informed. And there were things going on, like the young child who's getting all those critiques before the age of 12 who says, gee, I must be stupid. When they're not stupid, they can't do the thing because they're having trouble getting organized, or their brain doesn't have the filters that they need. Or, I used to ask, my daughter has ADHD and she's okay when I talk about some of this stuff. Yeah, she's amazing. But I remember when she was in middle school, she used to come home and I'd say, do you have any homework? And she'd say, I don't know. And I'd say, well, okay, so how about X class? And she'd say, yeah, I think the teacher wrote something on the board. I mean, this isn't about being stupid. She's really smart. She went to one of the top high schools in the country, but she wasn't paying enough attention to write it down in her book. She didn't have that skill set yet.
Right.
So, and then I'd say, okay, well, you probably need to call your friends to get the homework. She's like, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm like,
oh my God, that'd be emotional distress. How else?
How else are you going to do it? She was embarrassed, right?
I'll just go over a few different stats that I pulled up. Then I'll just get some of your thoughts on those. Okay. So some stats around ADHD's impact on marriage, stability, and satisfaction. ADHD adults have about twice the rate of divorce and separation than those without ADHD. Approximately 16 to 20% higher divorce rates.
They do have higher divorce rates. And they also have much higher rates of sort of marital dysfunction while married as well.
Marriages with one ADHD partner, report lower marital satisfaction, with average relationship satisfaction scores between 7 and 8 points lower than control couples. So just lower satisfaction. 58 to 75% of couples with one ADHD partner report significant relationship distress, compared to 30 to 50% of couples in the general population. And then another thing is 70 to 80% of non-ADHD partners report feeling overwhelmed by household duties and financial responsibilities. Approximately 65% report that ADHD symptoms, forgetfulness, distractibility, emotional reactivity, are misinterpreted as lack of caring or commitment.
Let's start with the relationship distress and the divorce rates and stuff. And this is absolutely true. I can't vouch that those numbers are exactly right.
The percentages feel somewhat arbitrary, but
well, it usually when they have a range, it's because there are multiple studies and they've looked at multiple studies, and so you sort of have to see how each study was done or whatever. But nonetheless, the numbers are high, and that does. By the time people find me, they're in distress. That's sort of part of the thing. So I can't compare, but I'm not at all surprised, because you have all of these misunderstandings. You do have the pressure on trust, that the inconsistency that the ADHD partner contributes adds, and then the parent-child dynamic where you become unequal in status. So the ADHD partner can feel like a lesser citizen in the marriage, and then you have impulsivity, and I see a lot of that playing out in terms of like financial issues, very commonly not wanting to save or not paying attention to budgets, things like that, and
impulsive spending.
Yeah, impulsive spending, that kind of stuff. Feeling like you're a great entrepreneur and just going off and using up the family resources to set up something when you actually don't have the skill set to to run the business, not really not engaging with that. Those kinds of things put a lot of pressure on relationships. And I think that the other thing that puts a lot of pressure on it is this sort of unrelenting, towards one of your other statistics, about the feeling overwhelmed on the non-ADHD partners part. It is overwhelming. And I see actually there's a huge demarcation at the point at which you have children. Typically, you're okay. Before the kids, there may be some scritchiness because you don't understand each other. But at the point at which you have kids, you add an enormous amount of very unsatisfying logistical work, like keeping kids safe and cleaning diapers.
Can you repeat that one more time? Very unsatisfying logistical work is like VULW. I like that as going forward. Yeah.
It's it's like ADHD kryptonite, right?
But it gives honesty and great weight to it, right? It is there. You can't make it go away
there
with a child.
And in addition to that, at least in heterosexual couples, you'll have a birth parent who's got hormonal things going on, and there's actually some research around whether or not a partner is like in a heterosexual relationship, whether a male partner is included early as an equal parent or whether they're sort of an auxiliary parent, and the different outcomes for the parents who are included and engaged in terms of the satisfaction for both partners in terms of the family triad or bigger as the family grows. And if ADHD is there and you haven't addressed ADHD before you have kids, it suddenly rears its ugly head in ways that feel very urgent. Like, not paying attention to whether the kid can roll off the diaper table or wandering off to get something or not thinking about whether the milk is too hot or whatever the thing is, not putting up the baby gate when the kid becomes mobile, things that feel threatening.
Yeah, things that are way more serious than I don't like the way you folded my socks or something like that. It's this like the baby. If you do this, the baby could hurt themselves or it's a safety issue.
Right. And so there's this combination of urgency and boredom or just, repetitiveness that is very difficult for families. So it gets worse and worse. The workload expands exponentially, and if the ADHD partner doesn't have the ADHD well enough managed to actually be really a strong partner in the relationship, it puts an enormous amount of pressure. It's easy to see why those parenting behaviors go into place. It is much more efficient when you're busy to say, go do X, than to ask nicely or to have a conversation about it or any of that stuff. And then, or why didn't you do Y, or I was really relying on you. Those things start to come up.
I never thought of the word efficiency holding space here, but that makes so much sense. I'm putting myself in a divine feminine role here. If I'm the mother who's already parenting and raising this kid and have decided through the whole 9 months leading up to and the birth that like my partner is not making it, like not getting a good enough grade to like for me to trust the changing table, for me to trust this and third, it's so efficient to just be a parent to everyone in the house.
Yeah.
To just slip right into that. Like, why would I code switch? That takes energy. That takes life force for me to code switch and treat you differently than this kid. But I can keep my rhythm, to quote another mentor, and that's actually more efficient. It saves me energy and time.
And these days, particularly in the US where we don't get a whole lot of maternity leave, you're balancing work and parenting, which is hard to do for, again, in a heterosexual relationship. Many women are carrying a lot more cognitive load anyway. And so there's bigger societal expectations that they're going to be the one who manages the household more, and et cetera. So a ton of pressure and not a lot of relief. And if you're a woman with ADHD, maybe not a lot of understanding about, how hard it is for you to do some of these things can be really difficult.
I would say like, we've heard about the double burden thing for women, right? I have to work and I have to take care of kids. I would almost say with ADHD, it's a triple, right? Yeah. It's a triple burden. I have to manage my partner's ADHD or help them manage it, which puts me in the parental role. And I have to now work. And I have to like take care of my, the kid and attend to their needs.
But there's a logic flow problem there, right? I thought you were going to go for the ADHD partner who has the woman who has ADHD. So here's the thing. Yeah. But here's the logic flow problem. I have to manage my partner's ADHD. That is the path that takes couples into a dangerous and difficult place. Thinking. It is the thinking that people have because, again, it's efficient and people don't know any other way. But you cannot manage your partner's ADHD. No. You can't do it. And that is the crux of starting to do better. Aaron, back to your example with your experiment, you have to accept you can't manage it. And then you are in the position of advocating for those things that you care the most about. So maybe it is child safety. Yes. I'll just take that as a topic because that's a big one. I had one couple say the non-ADHD partner came to me and said, we have 3 children. My partner who has ADHD forgets to put the caps on the medications. One of my kids has autism. Another one has ADHD. And I've already taken the kid with the autism to the hospital, wants to get their stomach pumped. How do I get my partner to remember to put the cap on the medication? To which I said, you're asking the wrong question. You don't know that partner isn't going to forget at some point, even if they have a good system. Anybody could forget, but the chances with ADHD would be better that they might forget. So the real question is, how do you make sure that your partner isn't responsible for any of the medications?
Yes.
Then, that way you have a higher likelihood that, in fact, the medications won't get left out. And this is just one of those things that because it's a life and death situation, you don't try to manage the ADHD. You actually try to avoid the problem that is created.
You find a solution.
Yeah, exactly.
And I have an interesting product to plug here. And I'm not endorsed. We're not endorsed by this company at all. But there's a device. It's called, I think, the Hero. And it's a medication dispenser kind of thing that you can put medicines in, and it'll set on a schedule, and it'll dispense them, and it'll have an alarm. So it's used for a lot of times elderly folks with dementia or that kind of stuff. But something like that could also maybe work, where it's a locked system, so it keeps kids out of it.
At the start of that, where in this case, the man is loading up the medications, if that was what he was going to be doing, you'd still have to make sure that the cap gets back on, or she loads up the medications, and then there's, it only unlocks at certain times of the day or whatever it is. But they, you have to think through these things, not along the lines of, okay, what should I be doing because society says I should be doing it, or because my partner wants me to do it. But what's possible? And, if something could kill you or maim you, you have to think really carefully about what the solution to that thing is.
Yeah. I had a crazy story. One of my clients, this is a real story. One of my clients, they had a problem with their car, right? And it was a shared car between the wife and the husband. And the wife didn't have ADHD, the husband has ADHD. And what happened is there was a fuel leak, right? A fuel line leak. And she told the husband, because it was his responsibility to take care of the cars. She's like, can you take this in? Can you handle it? Right? He's like, yeah, I got it. I'll handle it. I'll do it this week. All right. End of the week rolls around. She has to go down the mountain because has an appointment to get to, right? So she's driving the car thinking this got taken care of. She starts smelling gas.
I knew that's what you're going to say.
Yeah. She has to pull over, right? And the car the fuel line is out and it's leaking gas. It had been leaking this whole time down the mountain. And she gets livid. She's furious. She calls him and she says, I could have died. The car could have exploded. Why didn't you do this? And he was, obviously, I forgot. I was meaning to. And that was pretty much the end of their relationship. That was the straw that broke that relationship, or the fuel line.
The fuel line. Oh my God! What? Too soon?
Yeah.
No. That's it. No, yeah. The fuel line. And
she was
that broke the
afraid,
relationship.
rightfully afraid.
Yes.
And that's where her anger came
it's
from.
Justified.
It came from that fear, right?
Yeah,
and also that was a deal breaker. It sounds like it moved from desires into deal breakers. Now my life is
and it got interpreted as, well, you don't care about me. The little things get interpreted that way too. You don't care about me enough to do it.
Right.
If you cared, you'd do it.
Yeah.
This was like, you didn't care enough that I lived or died, that it got to that point. Now, I don't think the guy was malicious. I don't think he was intending this. I mean, here's my client. He told me so, right? He didn't. But sometimes the impact of the person's actions can be way more serious. And I just want to take that, put that down too, as like, we mentioned the my wife's example earlier with the like laundry and stuff. Yeah. But I do want to give credence to the other side too here, to just be like, no, when it comes to the safety of kids or something like that, that's way more serious. These can have very real life-threatening consequences.
Which is why I hope I teed you up, Melissa, for the wants, desires, deal breakers, because that's something I use all the time. So
a little Terry Cole going on there.
Seriously. Yeah, go on.
So, no, I agree. Actually, a really common one that I hear that people fight over a lot, which is just crazy to me, is car seats, right? Like 80% of car seats are not installed correctly, and some huge number. And I'll hear a non-ADHD partner say, my ADHD partner doesn't install the car seat properly. And I keep asking, I'll show them, whatever, and they still don't do it. And it makes me crazy. Make my partner do this. To which I say, stop right there. I can't make your partner do anything. Neither can you. So let's approach it differently. Maybe if you have 2 cars, maybe you need 2 car seats, and then you can install them. You can double check them. You can make sure they're safe, and then you don't move them. Or if you have to get into a lot of cabs or something like that, think about what some of the other options are. Maybe you need to be traveling by bus or something else. So really think, or you just say, hey, this is a life and death safety issue, albeit in small numbers, because you may or may not have an accident on this particular trip, but it is a big consequence if there is an accident. Yeah. So you put the person who is very careful about it in charge of it, and you put the other person in charge of something else that isn't life and death, and you just don't worry about it. There's no judgment. It's just a solution.
Yeah, wait, can I jump in for a second and make this for our listeners? This is not a gendered thing, and this does not have to be heteronormative either. I did this yesterday with my best friend Logan. I'm here with 5 guys. We're going to go hiking the 4-pass loop. It's primitive camping, and there's big storms coming in. All of our loved ones are like, where's the GPS? We want to be able to contact one of you. Mm-hmm. I own the GPS. I'm the only one in this group who's ever gone, other than one other guy, internationally camping for many days. In Peru, it happens to be, but like where you need one at 16,000 feet. I'm the one who owns it. But Logan is the one who's the most responsible in this group. So we transferred the app and profile from me to Logan so that Logan could be in charge of the GPS that I own. But I've come to know Logan since we were children, and we have built an egoless, a non-ego attachment, radical acceptance-based relationship. All of us know that Logan is the most responsible person. Here's what makes it weirder, Melissa. He has 3rd-degree heart block. He has a serious heart condition. If he were to pass out during this, it doesn't go back to me. It goes to the next responsible person in the group of 5 of us. And I go running, and I'm not kidding, I go running down the mountain to get a helicopter because I'm the most fit of the group. Why am I telling you all of this? This is radical acceptance-based thinking and planning. We are not attaching our egos to these things. I don't care if I own that device. I know that Logan is the most responsible. And everybody here knows that if anybody needs to run for help, it's going to be this monkey boy. I'm the most fit one. So like we don't argue against those truths, against those realities. And by accepting those realities, we can then move in really flexible and poetic and beautiful ways, and compassionate and considerate ways.
Right.
So I find that the guy who can't put the fucking baby seats in the car, that partner, if they, as to quote my therapist, you either have to kill a part of your soul to make this work, or you have got to let go lightly and do it yourself. I think Ari said this, right? You can't have everybody do, what's the quote from Ari, right? You can't have everyone do everything for you all the time.
Everything you want them to do all the time, right?
And be happy about it, right?
Yeah.
But you can't do everything yourself either, right? So like that's one of those beautiful moments of if the person who's angry that they can't rewrite, let's go lightly of them ever doing it again.
Yeah.
They've radically accepted that's not their role anymore.
And the radical acceptance is really an important idea. What the arguments are is the other person says, leave me alone. I can do this fine. You're just too picky. Right. Which is not the experience you were having with your friends, but it becomes a huge battle. And what I try to convince people is there are some things that, they reach a certain temperature of risky or life-threatening or whatever, where if one person is concerned in whatever direction that is,
exactly,
you go with that person's gut response or how to do it or the safety measures they want or whatever it is.
Yes.
Because that's part of being in a partnership. If somebody's that concerned, if it's that dangerous, then go with that person's concern and alleviate it.
And the catharsis is obvious and usually immediate to our listeners. Like when you, going back to what you said, is people just need to know that they've been heard and that they're safe.
I'm just thinking and putting myself in the shoes of the non-ADHD partner now, right? And what if they say, okay, well, so what you're saying is I still have to do the thing, right? I still have to do more.
Sometimes. Yeah, sometimes. Again, if you are concerned enough that the medications are going to get left out, you've seen it happen, you've taken a kid to the hospital, you know it's happened and it is dangerous, then you're going to have to do the thing, or you're going to have to come up with your hero thing or whatever, some solution that will work. But there's a lot of stuff you don't have to do. And it does need to be even. So if you're doing stuff like safety monitoring, then the other partner needs to be doing something else.
Something else they can do that is maybe not safety related, but is still contributing to the relationship.
And is still important.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have one person doing all the crappy stuff and somebody else doing all the really fun stuff. You split up all this stuff. You look at people's strengths. Here's a good example of people's strengths or not. And this comes as a form of a complaint from non-ADHD partners. They'll say, my ADHD partner's really good at getting down on the floor with the kids and playing with them and sort of being a kid and having a great time and really, and I feel really resentful because I get to be the bad parent, right? To which I say, well, why aren't you getting down on the floor sometimes and enjoying the kids also? You don't always have to be the bad parent. Sometimes maybe you need to be the voice of reason for something that is dangerous or whatever, but maybe not as often as you think, A. And B, go have some fun. Give yourself permission to go enjoy yourself as well. Take some of that time. Those kids are going to grow up. Or
the different side of the same coin, right? Go to the person who's always playing on the floor and say, hey, this rule was just broken. I need you to be the messenger, right? As opposed to me being the bad news bearer all the time, right? Like I would like you to go help with this conflict rather than me be the one all the time.
If they're aligned, they'll do that. If they're not aligned, lots of times you'll see the ADHD partner who grew up in a chaotic household, who learned, and it easily goes with the flow. And the person who grew up in the more organized household saying, no, that doesn't feel right to me. We need to be stricter about this. We need to follow these rules. We need to do this or that. They have to have some conversations around what works for them or doesn't work for them as parents.
As long as they're aligned in that scenario. Like, hey, this is the thing we agreed upon at our admin night, and I'm sick of being the one telling them it's time for you to take up the
And would you mind talking to them? But again, you don't control when they talk to them. You don't control how they talk to them, right? You hand off that responsibility. You hand it off. Yeah. You don't oversee it.
Hands off.
You let them have their own style. And so I think what you're getting to is really important part of, there's an expectation of equality, right? Are we being equal in this relationship? I hear this from my clients. And I tend to look at it like, well, they're misinterpreting sometimes what equal means, right? I think sometimes their expectation is you need to be able to do everything that I do really well, like planning the schedule, making sure the kids have what they need before they go to school, or whatever the things are, right? That they think are important to them. And they say, we need to be equal in these areas. I want to see that you're able to do the planning. You're able to make sure the kids have things packed in their backpack and they always have their lunch when they're dropped off. I want to make sure you also do these things as equally well as me. And I'm like, the way that I read that is like, no, that's a misalignment of expectation. Really, what we need to do is think about it more of what's equitable in the relationship, not equal. Because they may not be as good at remembering some of those things or doing the safety things that you are, or doing the planning. Those executive skills that you have that you're able to do naturally, they may not be able to ever compete with you because their brain doesn't work that way. No matter how hard they try and how much medication or therapy or anything. But they can do, where are their strengths? What can they do really well? Right. And how can you leverage those and say, hey, you are great at these things, and this is how you contribute to the household. I'm going to appreciate you for those things, and not continue to just lambast you and critique you on the things that you're not doing well.
Here's the fence that you have to traverse on that, which is if you take, when we were talking about, the ADHD partners are good at the sort of fun stuff and the interesting stuff and the reward focused stuff and all that, and that non-ADHD partners tend to have more managerial skills or whatever, you may end up in that situation where one person is the manager and one person is the fun person, and that will not be satisfying to the person who's the manager. Yeah. Maybe, I don't know if it would be satisfying to the other person or not. So one of the things that some of the marriage research suggests is that relationships are healthy and happy in a heterosexual relationship, at least, when the woman feels that things are well enough distributed rather than equal. Equal is a really hairy concept in U.S. society. It's really hard to determine what that looks like, to your point.
Amen.
Yeah.
So well enough distributed, and enough of the stuff. Like at one point, I said to my ex, I said, "Look, you have to do something that is a household related thing, because it's really depressing to me to be the person who has to do all of the household stuff in our relationship." And it wasn't that he wasn't doing stuff, but he wasn't doing anything that was care of the house, that was inside the house. Like he grilled and, he did some of that stuff. So he ended up taking on the nighttime dishes. And that became his thing. Like I never did the nighttime dishes because I hate doing them because I don't.
Was he able to get into that and be able to do that more or less?
Yeah, it took him time. So it was interesting. Took him several weeks, and it took me having to really hold back and not critique and not talk about the fact that there were 2 days worth of dishes still sitting around. I mean, he figured it out after a while when he ran out of spoons, right? So it took him a while because it wasn't in his head. Like his evening went from dinner to, playing with the kids or watching TV or going into the office, or it never went from dinner to the kitchen.
Yeah. There were no transition points. There were just blocks of activity.
It was other stuff, right? So he had all that other stuff he would used to doing. So he had to really adjust his thinking to go, okay, I'm going from dinner to clearing the dishes, to putting the dishes in the dishwasher and cleaning up.
What you helped him, or what you guys decided on, right, to help the relationship was, okay, you have to take on some responsibility because we want this. This isn't feeling right the way it's going, and your role will be this. You can take on this thing, or have them volunteer for the role or whatever, and don't assign it. Maybe that's too far, right? But be like, okay, so I'm going to take this on. You're going to take this on. We're going to divide it in these ways. Your nightly dish routine, but then it's going to take some time for them to develop that into a habit, or to actually become routine. So it takes for someone to allow for that space, like you said. You had to reserve the judgment. And know, okay, this isn't going to be overnight just because they agree to it. Isn't like it's going to be like a night and day. All right, they got all the dishes done perfectly the next day.
Nope.
It didn't work.
It's going to be like a growth kind of period here.
And actually, as we went through it, it turned out he really hated doing countertops. So I ended up doing the countertops. So I did that part of it because that part I didn't mind. And I don't want to say that that was the only thing my partner was doing. He did all of the travel planning. He did a lot of car stuff. He did, so there was a lot of other stuff
outside the house, inside the house. You were asking, look, I'm doing 100% of the inside.
He did all the bike maintenance. I mean, there was a lot of stuff he did. But none of it was about house maintenance and sort of what I consider the scut work of living together in a home. So
may I offer that it's also cyclical, right? Like I'm in what I consider to be the most communicative household I've ever been in, which is the one with my partner. I won't get too emotional, but I do believe that. So like we talk about the cycles. Like there'll be times where, because we work in professional storytelling, the work isn't consistent all the time, and somebody will be on, somebody will be off. So our schedules may demand more time outside of that domicile. They may open up an opportunity for more time inside, right? Yeah. But as long as we've established that there will be subtle, sometimes not so subtle shifts in weight of responsibility. I think that's why I really dig this equitable versus equal. Emily and I have established, that's my partner, that there's really no equal, if you get what I'm saying. Like there is just taking on burdens when we have pre-established and know that the balance will shift sometimes, that there will be cycles of et cetera. And the conversations around inside outside that we've had also include the cyclical part, the samsara part, which is, hey, for these next 2 to 3 weeks or 4 weeks, I know that you're doing X, Y, and Z, 10 hours a day, 5-6 days a week. I'm going to take on this, and this. But also, can you at least, what can you do during this time where you're like, your time and energy is limited? And I find us incorporating that as well.
There's an interesting transparency that you have embedded in that. And I think that's a really important part of that. You talk about trust. There's also an ownership aspect. And one of the problems that couples that are in ADHD impacted relationships and doing the parent-child dynamics thing is that the person says, just make me a list and I'll do it, or whatever. They don't take ownership of the thing. So the conversations that you're having with your partner assume ownership, joint ownership of these things. And that's important. You're not asking your partner to say, do X, Y, and Z. You're, and being in charge still being the manager. That does not work.
Right.
It feels very unsatisfying. Right. Even if the person is actually executing the stuff, it's still not theirs.
Yeah, you don't want to be the boss in the house all the time.
Yeah, it's tough to find this balance, this dynamic. And the key is we don't get it right. There's not an exact 50-50 exact right feeling thing. It shifts. It's dynamic, just like all relationships. And I think that's where we have to adjust expectations, because our satisfaction within the relationship will be dependent on how much we can have more realistic expectations and align ourselves, right? Like you said, you keep saying align with your partner. How connected, how aligned are they? How aligned are they within their values, their communication, the things that they do to help the relationship flourish? And I like this term flourishing, right? There's a whole group of psychology stuff and research about flourishing.
Seligman and the others, yes.
Yeah. But let's think about that, right? When we think about the relationship, let's not focus on all of the problems and where it's going wrong or what they're not doing well. But let's also look at if we want this to flourish, what can we do, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's not what can my partner do, it's what can I do. So back to
do? Yes. So
back to your story where you were really thinking about what kind of partner do I want to be. You took that on, you owned it, and you understood innately that was about you, not about your partner. It was about you letting go of being a picky, critical partner and choosing something different. And that ownership is really important, whether it's a chore or a mentality or, a communication style or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. I find myself saying, if you could just own it, to myself and others, kind of like, at humanity at large. And I think there's a nugget of wisdom here. Aaron used ownership language. It was you. You're talking about yourself. You did not put it on it. You didn't put that responsibility in anybody else's lap. And I think the rewards prove the validity in that choice. I think we could keep talking forever, Melissa, and maybe we should, but because you have a hard out, this is a chance for pluggables. That can be books, podcasts, shows. I'm going to be on the news later, whatever you would like to share with the audience.
Okay.
So Melissa, where can we find you? Where can the listeners find you?
So the best place is at ADHDmarriage.com, which is my website. And we have a whole raft of things there to help couples impacted by ADHD. I think it's really important to get on the same page and really understand what's going on. The knowledge is the first step in terms of improving the relationship. So we have a couple of things that do that, including most notably my couples seminar. And we have some ongoing programs to help people as well. And we have consulting, et cetera. So a whole lot of resources, and we hope people will come join in.
You have a few different books, and you have self-guided seminars, and you have some ones that also,
are by Zoom, live by Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And the book that people like to read first is The ADHD Effect on Marriage, which was my first book. And then I wrote a companion book talking about some very specific emotional areas like parent-child dynamics and the chore wars and stuff, and giving more information about those particularly sticky places. But the one to get into to really think about, to get some information is the first one.
And your other book too is, you have another book that's like ADHD couples, or the Couple's Guide to...
The Couple's Guide to Thriving with ADHD. Yeah, and I've written some parts for therapists, actually, for if there's any professionals on. There's a book called The Distracted Couple, which is a book for professionals. So for people who want to understand how therapists might work with them, or want to see sort of what the progression might be for repairing a relationship and some of the specific issues. It's written by a bunch of therapists and experts like me.
I'm going to have to check that out and use that with my clients. I've been recommending your other books. I didn't even know that one existed. That's great.
And Aaron, for you also, we are putting together a professional training program. So I've been doing a beta for a couple of years, and my consultants have all been trained by me at the website. But we're putting together actually a series of courses for professionals on learning to work with couples. Yeah.
Exciting.
So, all
right.
So we hope that'll start coming out in 2026.
You keep us posted and we'll blast about it for sure.
Oh, that'd be great. It's been delightful talking to you. If you guys want to have another conversation, I'm happy to do that.
We would absolutely love to.
There's lots going on here, and we've scratched the surface. So
we've got plenty. We got plenty more ground to cover.
Thank you so much.